Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Tonight on the show we have political commentator Chloe Dobbs, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Torbit. We've got the goal machine from Peterborough United, Aaron McLean, and former Touch of Frost star John Lyons. But first, let's go to the news.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 7 o'clock. President-elect Donald Trump has been handed an unconditional discharge in the Stormy Daniels hush money case, meaning he won't go to jail or face a fine. It comes just days before the 78-year-old is due to be inaugurated as US president for a second time on the 20th of January. Explaining his decision, Judge Merchant says the protections afforded to the office of the president are a factor that overrides all others. Meanwhile, Trump said this has been a terrible experience and he is totally innocent. A nighttime curfew has been imposed in the fire-hit areas of LA as police warn that anyone involved in despicable looting will be arrested. At least 10 people have been killed in wildfires tearing through the region, with high winds threatening to spread the flames further. 5 fires are still burning and a man has been detained, but authorities say there's no conclusive proof they were started deliberately. Officials warn the death toll could rise as it's been too dangerous to access some of the worst-hit areas. Body cam footage from the New Orleans attack has emerged, showing Shamsuddin Jabbar firing at police officers who dive to the ground before they shoot him dead. A warning, the following images may be distressing. The US Army veteran drove a rented truck into people celebrating on the city's famous Bourbon Street, killing 14 people. The FBI previously said Jabbar was 100% inspired by the Islamic State terror group. New footage released by New Orleans police shows him shooting from behind an airbag as several officers surround his truck after it crashed. The officers then run and dive for cover. The owner of British Gas has warned UK gas stores have fallen to concerningly low levels amid freezing cold temperatures. Centrica says the UK now has less than a week's worth of demand for gas in store. The country's largest gas storage site said it could be down to plunging temperatures driving up demand, adding that the need to replenish stocks could lead to rising prices ahead. A spokesman for the Prime Minister insisted that the UK had enough natural gas supplies to make it through the winter and said reports that Britain had come close to blackouts were not true. And officials are monitoring Elon Musk's social media posts for potential security risks, according to reports. The Home Office's Homeland Security team began the scrutiny after Musk's controversial comments about Labour's Jess Phillips, calling her a rape genocide apologist. Phillips, who has long campaigned against violence towards women, says threats against her have increased since the post. Meanwhile, Musk has criticised the UK government for rejecting a fresh inquiry into grooming gangs, sparking heated political debate. The Home Office has not yet commented on the monitoring claims. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. My name is Lee Anderson, Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield. And tonight on the show, she's back, the very glamorous political commentator Chloe Dobbs. Happy New Year to you. And first time on the show, our left in the corner is Matthew Torbit. Thanks, Matthew, for being a good sport and being left in the corner. But this week in Parliament, Labour MPs voted against having a full national inquiry into the Pakistani rape gangs. Here's what Sir Keir Starmer had to say.
I've set out what I did. I actually changed the system because I could see some of the things that were going wrong. I wasn't prepared. Unlike, some Tory politicians, I'm not tweeting about it or talking about it. I got on with changing it. In relation to the serious point you do make, because this is the victims here suffered terrible abuse. Unthinkable, unspeakable, genuinely sickening abuse, and then they weren't listened to. That has to be taken seriously.
Well, there you go, guys. This is the Prime Minister of our country. Obviously, I disagree. Matthew, you used to be an advisor to the Labour Party. What would you have advised them this week?
I think when a U-turn is quite obvious and that they're softening towards a public inquiry, a national inquiry, get ahead of it. I think the strange thing is it's very reactionary. And it reminds me of the Conservative government more previously, particularly post-COVID. I think last night you could see the Facebook ads that would be coming of said MP has voted against, imprisoning child rapists in your constituency. It looks terrible. And I can tell you now, there's a lot of backbenchers that aren't happy about it at all. It makes them feel very uncomfortable. I think get ahead of it. I'd have used the Sunday shows previously to say, do you know what, we're a government that listens, and we've listened to Oldham Council. They don't want their own, don't want to be marking their own homework, so we're going to go ahead and listen to the victims and give them exactly what is right. Now, there's no reason why you can't also implement the J report and the recommendations that they put forward. I just think this is it's all happening very quickly. There's politics being played on both sides. It wasn't a manifesto pledge. I don't think in any of the main parties' manifestos. So this is everyone's reacting as it happens and really allowing Elon Musk to dictate.
But I think, guys, Chloe, a lot of credit for this goes to Charlie Peters of GB News, who sort of uncovered 50 possible towns where this despicable behaviour has been happening. And I cast my mind back to a few years ago in Parliament when Sir Keir Starmer and the rest of his shadow cabinet were demanding an inquiry into whether or not Boris Johnson had been eating cake and drinking it in Downing Street. But this is refused it, point blank.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me like, once again, you've got Labour politicians not doing the right thing because it suits them politically. Yep. He's very happy to shout about asking for an inquiry if it means that it's going to damage the Tories, as in the case with that inquiry into the COVID parties. Whereas this, I mean, we know a lot of these places where these horrendous grooming gangs were operating were in places with Labour-run councils. An inquiry would probably expose a lot of figures in the Labour Party to have acted inappropriately and turned a blind eye to what was going on. But I really think that they need to just show some humility and do the right thing. I think it's absolutely disgusting that you've got the Prime Minister just standing there talking about the ICSA report over and over again, even though we've pointed it out to him 1,000 times. That did not focus on grooming gangs of Pakistani heritage, which is what we want to be focused on. And everyone can see, everyone can read through what he's saying and clearly see that he doesn't want the reputation of the Labour Party and potentially himself to be smeared by this, and he does not care about those young girls that have been, abused in the most horrendous ways.
Matthew, thousands of young girls have been systematically raped over the past 20-odd years in Midlands and northern towns by men, predominantly, of Muslim Pakistani heritage. We know that. We can say that on TV. I know in the past people have been accused of being racist for saying that, but it's a fact. And what I want to know is, I mean, I was going to ask a question in PMQs yesterday. What I want to know is why is this happening?
I mean, that might be, and I think the Times journalist that uncovered this many years ago has said that's the one thing that any inquiry has never looked at, the key specific reasons of why this is the case. I think I think on the left that there's almost like a blind spot. We have to get better at having uncomfortable conversations around race, around gender and things of this manner. And really it's a bit of a condescending attitude from actually people on all sides who talk about things like the Muslim vote, and Labour are worried about upsetting the Muslim vote. I think if we look across Donald Trump more recently, he has built the most diverse voting coalition in anybody's lifetime. And that goes to show there isn't, quote unquote, a Muslim vote, a female vote, a working class vote, or any of this sort of stuff. People's votes are there to be had. I don't discount it goes on in some areas where there'll be pockets of areas where groups of people may vote for the same thing. But I don't know why it happens. I think that would be the benefit of an inquiry.
But we've seen, Chloe, over the past few weeks, a few of these victims that's come out and spoke on TV or through the media, whatever, have told us some horrific stories where they've been told to shut up. I've seen one young lady this week who's been given a morning after pill by the police officer and actually forced to take a pill. This is disgusting.
Oh, it's absolutely disgusting. And you hear stories of people being caught and the young girls being arrested for being drunk and disorderly rather than the men who are raping them. We had Charlie interviewed a father who was arrested for going to try and save his daughter from the place where she was being abused, saying that it would be, borderline stalking him turning up at that flat. I mean, it is just absolutely appalling. I think there really is an issue with people being scared of being called racist or Islamophobic. And, you had Rotherham Council put somebody on a diversity and inclusion course for writing a report that mentioned the Pakistani heritage of the perpetrators. And I think it's clear to me that this problem of people being scared of being called racist and Islamophobic still persists today. It's not a thing of the past, because I think Keir Starmer would call for an inquiry if he wasn't scared of the people in his party being called racist and Islamophobic.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Matthew, that Sir Keir Starmer has whipped his backbenchers into voting against a full national public inquiry. Actually abstained on the vote himself. I mean, votes like this in Parliament where, I think it should be a conscience vote. It's a bit like abortion when we have the votes on abortion. This should be with your conscience. It should be a free vote. And I think to whip a vote like this could actually be his undoing.
It's not going to go down well, and it isn't going down well. I would say with that, I imagine the reason he's not turned up is he may well have been paired. As you know, there's a long tradition which, if the whips will work together on opposite sides.
When you've been whipped.
Oh, no, listen, he's the Prime Minister. He may have had many such meetings. However, I don't know his diary, but I imagine that might be the case. It might not. I think the only other thing I'd say as well is this was a bit of a wrecking amendment by the Conservatives. Now, I know it sounds like people are playing politics, but that's true. And if we'd have voted with the amendment, the bill would be dead, the whole bill would be dead, and therefore there would be no national inquiry. So they can bring a national inquiry. We don't need legislation. Keir Starmer can go and announce one tomorrow as long as Jess Phillips is all good with it as the minister that's overseeing this. And I do think that will eventually be the case.
Well, let's talk about Jess Phillips. She's looking pretty smug in the on the front bench at the moment.
I couldn't believe watching
chirping away. It's horrible to look at when you sat there.
Yeah, I mean, watching it online, you can't hear what she's saying, but I could see it. It looked like she was effing and jeffing and really animated.
But
really,
she's not
really
here
angry.
to defend herself. I'll just say that at the moment.
Yeah, she's not here to defend herself, and I don't know exactly what she was saying, but she seemed to be in a pretty foul mood with people who just want justice for the victims. As you were saying with the vote, I agree with you that it should have been a free vote. This is a moral issue. And I was absolutely flabbergasted when I saw Keir Starmer stand up and say that people are jumping on a far-right bandwagon to call for a national inquiry, trying to make it a political issue. I think it is more important than ever now that we have people not just in the Conservative and the Reform Party, but people on the left standing up and calling for a national inquiry so that this is not seen as a non-partisan issue. Else it will just get brushed back under the rug again as, some kind of far-right scaremongering,
yeah, Matthew,
when it's not.
It's not going down well when Sir Keir Starmer is accusing people of being far-right for being concerned, demanding a full public inquiry. I don't know who's advising him. Maybe you need to go back in the in the Labour Party and advise Sir Keir Starmer, because this is not going down well in my neck of the woods. I can tell you that.
No, and I thought it was silly for him to name-check people like Tommy Robinson. You're breathing life into that far-right element. There's definitely an element, and people like Tommy Robinson use these wedge issues as a way to make money. He's obviously almost collapsed a child rape inquiry himself. And I just think he needs to own the issue and say, I put in the work originally, which, it's on record by those that did the first inquiry that he did, and therefore goes, I will not let politics stand in the way of this. The most important thing in this is victims, and the victims feeling some level of justice, which at the moment there isn't.
And Chloe, we saw Nigel in the Commons this week on Wednesday say that if the government refused to hold a full public inquiry into Pakistani grooming gangs and their rape victims, that Reform UK would actually fund a full inquiry themselves. What do you think of that?
I think that may force the government to announce a national inquiry, because they'll be worried, oh, if Nigel does it, it's going to look absolutely terrible for us and look like we didn't care. I hope that the consequence of Nigel saying that is that the government announces an inquiry, because that would be a proper statutory public inquiry where they can force people to turn up who need to be held accountable. If Nigel does a private one and raises the money for it, he won't be able to force people to turn up. But the upside is Labour won't be able to meddle with it.
That's a great debate. Thanks to Matthew, I left in the corner. I wish we had Matthew Stadlin on now, because he'd have been defending this all night long. No, but we actually had some common sense from our left in the corner today, which is good to see. But do not go away, because coming up next we've got former Touch of Frost star John Lyons.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Teenage girls are out drinking their male peers in the UK at a greater rate than any other European country. Yes, more than a third of 15-year-old girls in the UK report getting repeatedly drunk, compared to less than a quarter of boys the same age. I suppose what I'd say to this is, boys, what are you doing? Pull yourself together. Well, joining me now is the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, and the former Labour advisor, Matthew Larser. Charlotte, you're going to have to speak up on behalf of girls the country over here. 15-year-old girls boozing much more than their male counterparts.
I think it's to do with the pain threshold, so we can handle hangovers better.
Do you get hangovers when you're 15 years old?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was drinking hooch and smelling...
Absolutely. Whatever happened to hooch?
Yeah. And I just think we can tolerate it better. Right. And I don't know, I grew up in that kind of wild child 90s drinking era. I'm showing my age a bit. And, God, we drank a lot as teenage girls. I mean, it's actually shocking now in retrospect.
Well, I also think in terms of boys versus girls, I wonder if we've got a bit of a thing about... I mean, the old cliché that girls develop quicker, they can become social quicker. They can certainly get into the pub more easily because they look older. Yeah. You know, because of makeup, etc. I wonder if the boys are all just, you know, in their rooms playing on their devices, as it were. You know, as people increasingly dominated by screens, whether in fact there's an issue about socialisation, about whether in fact, you know, the lads are not out there socialising.
They have little sips of wine in France from the age of like 12 and they're absolutely fine about it. Yeah. Whereas we all know what happens to British girls, because I was one of them. You turn, however, old enough to get a bottle of Smirnoff Ice, and boy, do you go for it, and until you're vomiting, basically.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World. He's back in the day, and he's back, John Lyons. What a pleasure. Thank you for coming back, John.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I got a bit of a plan here what we were going to talk about earlier today, but just before we came on, we were talking about on the buses.
On the buses.
And I'll get you back, lad.
I'll get you back, lad.
Come on, you was in several episodes of that.
I was certainly in 5 of them. Yeah. And in fact, at the very beginning, I was going to be a regular.
Really?
But I then had to go off and do another job. And the producer said to me, John, any time you want another job, get your agent to call us and we'll write you in.
So over Christmas, I had one of those afternoons where I got the old mince pies out, the cream, the single malt. And it was Holiday on the Buses, followed by, I think it was Mutiny on the Buses, 2 of the films. And I mean, I've seen them loads of times, but how funny. They'd get cancelled today, wouldn't they?
Oh, yes. Oh, a lot of it. Although, I must say, they do show the series on ITV3 in the mornings. But there's quite a few of them in there that they would not show.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another one, Mind Your Language. I don't think they would show that.
Yeah, I remember
but
that.
I did that.
Yeah.
And what was that one? Love Thy Neighbour.
Love Thy Neighbour.
Oh, you'll never see that.
Yeah.
I did one of those. I did a lot of comedies.
But when you look back to those comedies programmes in the 70s, they come with a health warning now. I mean, they're of their day.
Yes,
and
they
we should
do.
be reminded that that was...
Well, and in some programmes they do put up a little sign saying that in the day when this was made, things have changed now. In other words, you couldn't say now what we did then.
Yeah, got a country full of snowflakes.
Yes.
Well,
but they were great fun, I must say.
Yeah, great fun. Let's do a serious bit, John, because you are from Whitechapel.
I am indeed.
A working class, tough area of London.
Yep.
You still live within 2 miles of where you was born.
Where I was born.
So you're a home bird. How has that changed from the whatever it was?
I was born in 1943.
43.
Yes.
To present day.
Oh, tremendously. Well, when I was born in 1943, of course, it was in the middle of the war. My father worked in the docks and my mother worked in the hospital as a cleaner. So there was a lot of bomb sites, if you can imagine. In fact, at the house I was born in was just 3 houses left. Everything around us was bombed. So, yes, of course, it's changed. But slowly over the years, I now live, 2 miles away in what's called Hackney, overlooking a lovely park. And now, just the other day, I looked, there's a house 2 doors away from us, going for £2.5 million.
Wow.
Now, we have a village around us where we have gastropubs and butchers and bakers and things like that. So, no, it's changed tremendously.
And what about the culture of the area? That's obviously changed.
Well, it's changed because of the people, that have moved in.
And has that made it better, do you think, over the years?
Probably yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
We get very little trouble, very few fights, very few arguments and shouting in the street.
It sounds like
that we used to get.
Very nice place.
It's a lovely place to live.
So, Panto season.
Panto, yeah.
We've had a bit of a pantomime in Parliament this week with the rape gang scandal, which I think's cast a dark shadow over our great country. But you've been, politics aside, you've been in Panto over the past couple of months or so.
Oh, yes, I have. In fact, we finished 10 days ago. Although I must say to you, I caught the flu towards the end of it, and I had to miss the last 5 days, which is 10 performances. You do 2 performances a day, and I missed 10 performances, which is not good. You feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
So I had to leave them, and my understudy went on. So I had the flu. I've now just got over it. But I will probably do just 1 more left in me.
Well, listen,
I think
there's plenty left in you.
Oh,
listen, John.
You haven't seen me first.
You must have been to hundreds of theatres around the country over the past 60 years.
Yes, I have.
What's your favourite theatres you've been to?
Well, yes, there's certainly quite a few of them. Nottingham Theatre Royal, beautiful.
Great, my neck of the woods.
Yes, a beautiful.
I used to take my kids there every year to pantomime.
Beautiful theatre.
Yeah.
The Mayflower in Southampton.
Yeah.
These are the big ones. Yeah. Hippodrome, Bristol.
I produced a shout in Bradford in the corner for some reason.
Oh, Bradford, yes.
Yeah.
I did the Alhambra
in
1964. I've done a lot of pantos.
Yeah.
I'd say 36. I did 7 with Jim Davidson.
Well, he's a great friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you, I think when my kids were little, like I say, we used to go, the one in Mansfield and one in Nottingham. One of the standout moments in the Nottingham pantomimes, I've seen some great people like Cannon and Ball, seen them there, the Chuckle Brothers, they were really, really funny. But Danny LaRue, he came on with this silver dress, giving it all this, absolutely brilliant.
Yes, he was good. He was good, Danny. Yeah. I never worked with him. I met him maybe twice, but no, I never worked with him. But yeah, he was good.
And there's something about the pantomimes, John, I always found, because when you go with little children, when mine were maybe 8 and 5, there's a lot of jokes in there for the adults.
Yes.
Which go over the head of the kids, and the optics and everything and the magic is there for the children.
Yeah. Oh, no, you have to mix it up. So the afternoon show is different, slightly different, not a lot, but slightly different to the evening one.
Yeah.
But yes, you have to put those in, which is quite good. And we now, we put in what's called cod dry. So in other words, when you dry, you forget your lines. Now, in a serious play, that's not good. You don't want to do that. But you don't mind doing it in a panto because the audience love it.
It's funny, isn't it? 'Cause they're with
when
you,
you
aren't they?
go wrong, they love it.
Yeah.
So they now write it in.
So who's the funniest person you've worked with in pantomime? do you
Well, it must be Jim Davidson.
Yeah?
It must be Jim. On his day, Jim was perfect.
Yeah.
Really good. His timing was and he could use that audience.
Yeah.
He knew how to use an audience.
Yeah,
he was good.
we went to see him in Skegness last year, me and Richard Tice and a few friends, and we actually sat on the front row, and he clocked us straight away, did Jim, and with that, this is career ending for us.
Never sit on the front row of a Jim Davidson show.
He was absolutely hilarious. We went back in his changing room at the end, had a few beers with him. What a gentleman! What a gentleman
he was with me.
Him. But listen, John, that's been fascinating. Our time is up. Thanks for coming back on the show. Hopefully we'll get you back on again later this year. Thanks, that's great.
Well done.
And my mother says thanks for the book with the autograph you gave her.
My pleasure.
But coming up next, we've got right versus left.
Tomorrow at 8 p.m, tune in to a GB News Investigates documentary as we tell the full story of the grooming gang scandal.
My childhood has been stolen.
We will expose the cover-ups that have kept this national scandal under wraps for decades.
Not one person has been held accountable.
Our investigation uncovers the true scale of this outrage.
I want to see senior officials held legally to account.
On GB News, Grooming Gangs, Britain's Shame.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A very good evening to you. Temperatures falling sharply out there at the moment, leading to a very frosty start to the weekend. Many of us will have a dry weekend thanks to high pressure. But although the pressure's high, the temperatures are going to be low. Under this high pressure, clear skies and light winds, meaning temperatures likely to get to minus double digits, minus teens across parts of northern England and Scotland. Not quite so cold further west. There's a weather front here. It's been bringing a little bit of rain to South Wales, southwest England, and it'll bring a bit more to parts of Northern Ireland through the night. But it also means here temperatures will be lifting, maybe some snow over the hills, but mostly it'll be rain and drizzle. Elsewhere it's dry. Fog is going to thicken up through the night. The Welsh Marches across the Midlands, parts of East Anglia, Lincolnshire too. So be aware of that because it could last for much of the day. Not as cold in the morning across the southwest and southwest Wales. Outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland. Dull, damp, drizzly start here, but it should turn brighter through the day because this rain's going to creep into western Scotland. Again, here, not as cold first thing in the morning, but where there's snow lying on the ground over the Cairngorms, we could be as low as minus 15 or minus 16 Celsius. So a cold start. Potentially a little icy in places. The fog is likely to stick over parts of the Midlands and East Anglia, but it will be very patchy in nature. The rain also fairly patchy in nature as it trickles towards western Scotland, North Wales and northwest England. As I said, it'll turn a bit brighter in Northern Ireland. Many places fine and sunny. Temperatures, though, still struggling in the east. 2 or 3 degrees. Where the fog sticks, we probably won't get above freezing. And temperatures will be back down below freezing across much of England and Wales Sunday morning. Again, some dense patches of fog around. Bit of a switch, though, for the northwest. A more active weather front coming in here, bringing a bit more rain and a strengthening wind. Look at where the wind's coming from now. The south, bringing milder air, but it'll still be pretty cold across the south.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's time for Right versus Left, and I am delighted to be joined by Chloe Dobbs and Matthew Torbett, former Labour advisor, although I think he's a bit of a secret reformer. But we're going to talk about nuisance neighbours, guys, this time. Here's what I had to say back in 2019, just before the general election, when I was talking about nuisance neighbours in Ashfield.
It's Lee Anderson, your parliamentary candidate for the Conservative Party at the next general election. And what I'm about to say is my own personal opinion, nobody else's. I stood on this spot a few months ago banging on about nuisance tenants throughout this lovely estate on Corsica and the fact they were making people's lives a complete misery. Now I've been banging on to the council, banging on to the police about getting these nuisances evicted. So hopefully over the next few days we might see something. Now people will say to me, but they've got to live somewhere. That's right. So my plan would be, and again this is just my own personal opinion, is that these people who have to live somewhere, let's have them in a tent in the middle of a field, 6 o'clock every morning, let's have them up, let's have them in the fields, picking potatoes or any current seasonable vegetables, back in the tent, cold shower, lights out, 6 o'clock, it's the same the next day. That would be my solution.
So guys, you saw that clip there. I was having lots of problems as a local councillor, as a campaigner, with nuisance tenants on the Corsica estate in Ashfield, and residents fed up. You've got youths, feral youths, you've got families revving their motorbikes, doing, smoking the drugs, staying up all night, thieving, breaking into sheds, when decent, hard-working people wanted to get up in the morning, go to work, pay the taxes, pay the way, lead a good life, be good neighbours, be good residents, but these idiots are ruining their lives. And I said this week in Parliament that I wanted the 3 strikes and out rule to kick these nuisances out of their council houses. But the Labour Party actually disagreed with me. I wanted to be a little bit tougher. Listen to this bit. The usual question I get asked is, where are these nuisance neighbours going to live? Where do we put them? Well, on the record, honourable members, I'm not bothered where they go. But I've got 2 solutions. I've got 2 options for these people. Now they can either behave themselves and become good tenants, good neighbours, integrate, or they can do what other people do, normal people. Go and get a job, stop committing crime, save some money up, work hard, save a deposit, save enough for a bond, and then go on private rent somewhere. Now, I believe in a 3 strikes and out sort of rule, where you give them a warning, then another warning, and then on the 3rd warning, you're gone. So there you go, guys. The Labour Party want a 1 strike and out rule. I asked for a 3. I'm actually going to go with the Labour Party. What do you think to that, Matthew?
I think it would be hard to implement. I don't think it's a bad idea in principle, believe it or not. I don't know where I stand on the strikes. I think the problem is a lot of these local authorities, whether it's passing the buck or otherwise, they put the onus on the complainant and then expect you to record what people are up to. You're putting potentially your personal safety at risk, depending on what these people are like. Listen, everyone's entitled to live in a safe environment and not have people keeping you up all night. I will add, I think social housing gets a little bit of a bad rep. I think lots of this stuff goes on in privately owned housing as well. And social housing really was set up by the Attlee government to be community housing and have all manner of people living in it, and now it's seen as sort of poor people housing or cheaper housing. I think the only concern I would probably have, and I know you said in the Westminster Hall debate yesterday, where do they go? I don't really care, these people. If you're not going to abide by your tenancy agreement, tough. And I think I get that argument. But at the moment, even in London, if we take London alone, where we are today, we pay £4 million a day in temporary accommodation.
Yeah, I get that.
And because of the Homelessness Reduction Act brought in by Bob Blackman, these people are legally obliged to be rehoused, even temporarily. If you present yourself as homeless, unless you were to define them as intentionally homeless because they'd broken their tenancy, I'd worry about the cost it would add to the already.
But here's the thing, Chloe. Back in the 1940s, the Attlee government, they introduced social housing. They built over 1 million homes, which I said in the Westminster Hall debate this week. A wonderful thing. And back in the day, you had to be considered to be a good citizen. You had to be married if you was a couple to get social housing. You had to respect your neighbourhood. You had to keep your house in good order. The council officers would come round and check your garden, make sure that your house was being kept well. You had to make sure your kids were behaving themselves on the street. And if you weren't, they were round and they were booting you out.
I mean, and that is how it absolutely should be. It is not a right to have social housing. The reality is that we have got a chronic shortage of social housing in this country. People are on waiting lists for years. We've got about 1.3 million on the waiting list for one. When you've got that shortage, you've got to have some kind of priority system in place. Why is it fair that people who have sat on that list for years, who are good, hard-working citizens, who behave themselves, who clean up their mess, who look after their community, who bring up their kids well, should be behind in the queue, behind somebody who's going to make a complete mess of the place, be smoking weed, creating a smell, causing noise in the middle of the night. And it's not fair on the kids who are born into this. It's a complete lottery what family you're born into. I want kids in this country to have the best chance possible of making a good life for themselves.
So we see it a lot, Matthew, when we're out on the campaign trail on our council estates. The vast majority are decent, hard-working people. A lot of them have actually bought their own council house. You can see, because the gardens are nice. They've probably had a bit of double glazing done. They really look after. They're proud. They've been given not a handout, but been given a little bit of help to buy the council house and have a financial stake in society. Then you go to other parts where you see, weeds 10 foot high. The dustbin's not been emptied for about 3 weeks. There's half a settee buried in the garden and an old manky old car there on bricks in the garden. Ferals running around, effing and blinding, causing problems. These people shouldn't be housed, surely.
No, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I think listen, I grew up on estates. I've lived most of my life on estates. We all know these types of people.
But this is taxpayers' money. The bloke next door is going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, doing a 12-hour shift, pays his taxes to keep this feral family in exactly the same house, who's not contributing towards... In fact, the only thing they are contributing is increasing crime in the area.
But again, I think it comes down to individual cases. There's different reasons why people are like this. You get certain people that are genuinely mentally ill and depressed. Therefore, that's why they haven't gone out and done the garden. You do get people that are...
I tell you what,
gardening is good for mental health. I tell you that.
We do need better mental health provisions in this country. The NHS, what they do is an absolute sham. They just hand out pills rather than actually give you...
Or maybe just say to them, go and do your garden. That's good for your mental health.
I think what would be a useful thing would be for the government to roll out things like Housing First. Council housing saved me when I was homeless, totally, to help turn my life around. Housing First is basically when I think a lot of the problem is...
But how long was you homeless for, Matthew?
12 months.
12 months. And when you got your council property, I would imagine, was it a flat?
Yeah, it was a flat.
Did you behave yourself?
Of course I did, yeah.
Exactly.
No, exactly. But I'm wondering when these things had changed, because I used to have someone come round from Stockport Homes checking that was looking after it. You want to make sure people aren't doing all sorts. If that isn't the case, is that a cut to funding? Are people not finding the time to go around and do it?
I think we had this discussion in the debate about cut to funding, more police, more council officers. Sorry, we need a deterrent. The deterrent stops it.
We've got to have some kind of accountability in society.
I think the deterrent can be there, but you need to also have the support for people that need it. So if you have things like
I've worked in housing, I've worked in homelessness.
I understand. And I think a lot of these people at the top of the band A, that are priority, may well be vulnerable. And if you're given a house at last minute because a new development's gone up and they've decided to put 10% of social housing, they're in, but you need the wrap-around care.
But what's happened in Ashfield, and it's happening around the country, Chloe, is we see some of these OAP complexes, bungalows, flats, whatever, which traditionally over the past 50, 60, 70 years have always had pensioners in. And sadly, I've seen it with my own family where the pensioners have died off. What have they done? In their wisdom, they've put druggies in, they put, cons in, convicts that just come out of prison. And it's not just the tenants they're putting in, it's their friends and family that keep coming to visit them, causing mayhem in these flats. And little old ladies sat there, supposed to be a retirement home, terrified to unlock the door. I mean, the first thing she faces when she unlocks the door is a stench of weed coming in. It's disgusting.
It is absolutely disgusting. I mean, look, we need to sort this country out and we need to have some accountability, be it with the housing, be it with the police actually doing their job to actually get people in this country behaving, because when I grew up, I lived in a pretty safe environment, but as I get older, it starts feeling like this country is becoming more and more unsafe. Also, the fact that we are putting a huge proportion of social housing is being taken up by people who are foreign nationals or have come here illegally. I think that is absolutely appalling, that we've got Brits on the streets, we've got a huge shortage of social housing, that we're not prioritising our own people. There's something very wrong about that.
Well, we've seen that. I mean, I go through I walk through Westminster Tube Station most mornings just to walk into Parliament, and you see these poor souls in the sleeping bags, in there for a bit of warmth. You know, people's left them a bit of food, and you think, you know, if you would have come over on a boat that very day, you'd have been in a 4-star hotel tonight. It's wrong.
Yes, but I think that also speaks to the idea that we've not built houses for years, and I think it goes right the way back, and I know it's easy for people to blame her on the left, but you go back to Margaret Thatcher's right to buy, which I think actually is a good policy. Yeah. Giving people the right to be able to buy their own council home is good. The issue was, as everybody seems to understand, is we didn't build enough of them. And we've got 50% less social housing. Yeah. There's a conversation to be had about immigration, but again, that sort of impacts again on the homelessness. We've had a 400% increase on failed asylum seekers being turfed out of hotels and now being on the street. That's still costing us in the health service and everything else. We need more support for people, but there has to be a deterrence if they're not willing to.
So, guys, do we agree one striking out?
Don't know. Waits to be seen.
I think 3 strikes is fair, but there needs to be some sort of intervention after the first strike.
Let's go to the yes/no quiz. I've not done that for a few weeks. This is Matthew's first attempt.
You're trying to catch me out.
Yeah, I'm going to try and catch you out. The basic questions, and you've just got to say yes or no. I mean, we've had Stephen Pound on here about 20 times. He's still not come to terms with it. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but don't.
He's getting on a bit, Stephen. That might be.
He's getting on a bit. Yeah, that's the ageist comment. Number 1, Matthew. Should there be a public inquiry into the rape gang scandal?
Yes.
Chloe?
Yes.
Chloe, should Elon Musk keep his nose out of British politics?
No.
Yes, unless he's doing it in a cabinet position for Donald Trump. I know that's against the rules, but these things aren't always yes and no, Lee.
Well, it is. You can come back to one at the end.
OK, fine.
Unbelievable. Any relative? Have you a relative of Stephen Pound?
No.
That's good. That's good news. Matthew, will Starmer last a full term?
No.
Ooh. Chloe?
No.
Ooh. Chloe, should nuisance tenants be refused social housing?
Yes.
No.
He's got a bit left, hasn't he? Matthew, final question. Will Donald Trump be a good president?
Yes.
Chloe?
Yes.
Wow. Chloe, it's what? Got 5. Sorry, Matthew. Not a bad attempt. You got 4. You did struggle a little bit. That's the yes/no quiz. That's back. Chloe 5, Matthew 4. But thanks for coming on the show, mate. I really appreciate that. But coming up next, we've got last orders with that well-known goal machine, Aaron McLean.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
For anyone looking for winter sun, I can report very mixed conditions across the Med. Unsettled in Italy with showers in Greece, but across much of Iberia it's fine. Plenty of sunny skies, breezy towards the Canaries. And we've got this area of low pressure moving through Italy. That's going to bring unseasonably windy weather and outbreaks of rain with snow over the mountains. Meanwhile, showery conditions and a strong wind, but mild for Greece for the time of year. And then it turns more settled widely across the Med next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Mr. Motivator, he joins us now. Mr. Motivator, a very happy new year to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. There you are, bright and early. So how are things? How can we all kick ourselves into shape?
By the end of January, most people have thrown their New Year's resolution out the window. I think what's important is that we make a change for life and we we set ourselves small goals. And as we achieve those goals, then we reward ourselves. So in other words, you want to run 10K, you don't immediately get up and go run 10K, do you? You run between 2 lampposts and walk between 20. If you're not into running, don't choose running. If you're into dancing, that's great. If you're into any kind of movement, that is the way to keep yourself active, healthy, and also maintain your independence.
So, Derek, is the point that you keep it manageable and small enough that it's achievable?
Why don't we just find 4 exercises that you do for 1 minute each exercise, and you do that 4 times a day? Achievable, isn't it? That's only 4 minutes of exercise. And I guarantee at the end of the day, you'd have done 12 minutes, which is like your daily dozen. So there's your goal. I wanted to do a daily dozen of exercise lasting a minute each, right? And the first thing you could be doing is getting up from your chair, right? The moment you stand up, you incorporate so many muscles in your legs, right, that you're going to feel good, yes? So,
right, go on then. Get up off your chair, Adam. Show me how it's done.
Easy, come on.
Easy, yeah. Look at
no
that.
hand. The next thing I want you to do is to reach up real high. And if you bring it down, up
I'll
and
do
down.
that one.
Yeah.
For a minute, palms facing.
Oh, for a minute?
You're not flying a minute. That's better.
There we go.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time for last orders at the bar, and I've got Aaron McLean, the goal machine here. He used to play for Peterborough United. You bagged loads of goals for them back in the day. But I've got a bone to pick with you, young man. You scored at the City ground against Nottingham Forest for, was it Hull City?
For Hull City, yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, that was my job, unfortunately. I must say, that was actually one of my favourite goals.
Was it really?
Because I remember, obviously, playing at the City ground, unbelievable stadium, historic.
It is great.
So, and we beat you 1-0.
OK, no need to rub it in. But you made your Premiership debut at White Hart Lane.
At White Hart Lane,
How was that?
It was incredible.
Yeah.
A lot of my family are, for their sins, Tottenham supporters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, as a kid, that's what you grow up wanting to play in the Premier League.
So, Aaron, we spoke earlier about footballers, young men getting into football, being at a club from maybe 8 years old, going through the academy system, getting to 16 and then getting released. That has a serious impact sometimes, don't it, on their mental health?
Absolutely. You know, I'm one of the fortunate ones, you know, who I was at Chelsea from 10 years old to 16 and then got released. Now, I was fortunate enough that one of my friends was at Leyton Orient and said, look, Leyton Orient are interested in bringing you in. And I then went on and had a career. But so many get to that age and don't have that. And, you know, for them, it's very, very difficult mentally.
So I think especially young men, because I'm involved in a mental health charity for young men, and we have noticed, Aaron, that a lot of these young men have been involved in football clubs. Yeah, so you've had some great opportunities, Aaron, in professional footballer, but not every young footballer gets that opportunity. They may get released, as we said, at 16, 17 or whatever, and they're sort of in limbo. They've got no career, nowhere to go to. And I'm a big believer that these sports clubs, whether it's football or rugby or whatever, should offer 2 alternatives. You know, 2 career paths, either a professional footballer, or if you don't quite make it, you can still go and play football at a lower level, but have a career as well, maybe be an electrician or a plumber.
100%. You know, listen, I've had multiple conversations with various different people, whether it's the PFA or whether it's clubs. Even players who do have careers, you know, there's so many that don't make it and don't quite make it to the level or only play at a lower level. There's so many that do have long careers, but once you come to the end of that, you've spent, you know, for me, I spent 20 years as a professional footballer. Once I finished playing, what do you then do for the rest of your life? You know, at 35, once you retire, you still have to have a purpose in life. Yeah. But I'd almost be starting from ground zero. I'm fortunate that I went into coaching and then went into the media.
That's good.
But for every one of me, there's hundreds that don't. And I've got so many friends who, I've got to say, you know, have really, really struggled on the, you know, mental health side.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, because you go from like playing in stadiums, big stadiums, small stadiums, crowds, singing your name, and all that sort of stuff, that adulation, the buzz of winning games, and you know, the downs of losing games, and you go from that to sort of nothing when you finish. I mean, that's a big come down there.
It's a huge come down, and it's not just missing out on, you know, having fans shouting your name and stuff, but it's also, what is your purpose in life? At 35 years old, you've still got your whole life to live. But in terms of qualifications or you know, what do you have? Do you know a trade? Do you have a business that you want to go into? Do you actually know what you want to do from 35 years old till you get to, you know, 60, 70, 80? You know, do you actually know what you want to do with your life? And a lot don't. A lot don't have.
But you've done something different with your life. You've gone into coaching, and now you're a pundit on Sky TV as well. So, I mean, that must be great doing that. You know, talking about stuff you love.
Oh, it's the best. I don't class it as a job, you know, because it's, for me, it's the next best thing. Being able to just sit, watch football and talk about it, give my opinions, is amazing. You know, I don't see it as a job. I'm, like I say, I'm one of the fortunate ones that I get to.
Lots of footballers, football fans be watching this. We spoke earlier, Aaron, about match day and what it's like. And a lot of the professional players don't see that. They don't see the dads getting up with the sons or mates meeting in the pub before the game, putting the scarf on, putting the shirts on, going for a few bevies, getting ready. You know, match day, getting the atmosphere as it builds up to 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon in the ground. Anything can happen. There's nervousness as well. It's great, that is, for the fans.
It's amazing. I've experienced it once. You know, 10 o'clock start, going down to the pub, meeting up your mates, then going to a pie and mash, then going on to another pub, meeting up with everyone else, and then the walk to the stadium. You know, I've only experienced that once, and I've got to say, that's something that I feel that, for having a 19, 20-year career, I really missed out on. So I definitely recommend any footballers to go and experience that at some point.
So in all your playing career, who was the best footballer you ever played with or against, or both?
Played with, I've got to say, Tom Huddleston.
Yeah.
He was exceptional.
Played for Derby a bit, didn't he?
Yeah.
Derby
I played with him at Hull City.
Yeah.
And left foot, right foot, identical.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say he was the best to play with. Played it against. This has kind of changed over the years, but I remember playing against Paul Gascoigne when he was at Everton, and you know, when I look back at that game, I've got to say, like, he was outstanding.
Wow.
And what a legend.
Well, I saw Gazza play at the City Ground in about, he's the same age as me, Gazza, and it would have been probably early 80s. I think it was 17, I'm pretty sure it was either New Year's Day or Boxing Day. He was 17. We'd never heard of him. We're in the Trent End, and he come on and he just bossed us. And I thought, who is this man? Who is this little fat lad? He's like, going through us like a dose of salt. I think they had a player called Mirandina playing from them. Can you remember him? He was like a Brazilian centre forward. I think he scored against that day. But Gazza was something special.
Well, you look at the career that he had, and I played against him. You know, he was at the back end of his career when he was almost seeing it out at Everton, but ability-wise, he was far and away the best player on the pitch.
Oh yeah, he was. I think absolutely superb. One of the best footballing brains, and for a daft lad, because he used to act daft, didn't he? But he wasn't daft.
Yeah.
He could make some of the best footballers on the planet look pretty stupid.
Absolutely.
But anyway, you talked about careers and training and opportunities. Oh, we've got a chance for you now, Aaron, to indulge in a new career, and that's pulling a pint. Got a pint pot here, and the easiest one to pull is the neck oil.
Okay.
Bob's, the landlady, will obviously disagree with me. So you've got 30 seconds to pull the perfect pint, plonk it on the bowl, and we can see if you're up to the job.
Okay.
Go for it.
Go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, best atmosphere at a football ground, Aaron?
The best atmosphere I've experienced, this is awful.
Yeah, it's dreadful.
Is going to a game at Anfield.
Yep, I'll put that on the bar, please. I mean, look at that. State of that. I mean, I don't think they'd be shouting your name. Well, they probably would be shouting your name. If you poured a pint like that in the local boozer. What's all that about, mate?
Yeah, I won't give up my day job.
Yeah,
I don't spend a lot of time in pubs, you see. That's my excuse.
So Anfield, I've been there a few times. Used to be a great atmosphere there, but since all the seats have come in and they've made the Kop small, it's not.
Well, I've only been there a
the
few
same.
times, but Anfield on I've been to Champions League game.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I've never experienced an atmosphere like it. Playing-wise, I've got to say, Ellen Road was insane.
Yeah,
it was like a cauldron.
Yeah.
When you're on the pitch, I remember playing against them. We were beating them. They brought Jermaine Beckford on, and you almost knew you was going to lose because the crowd erupted. He came on, scored 2 goals, and we lost the game.
Great arena, isn't it? Listen, I mean, great footballer, Aaron, a goal machine, rubbish behind the ball, but a top bloke, Aaron. That's brilliant, mate. That's last orders of Aaron McLean, the goal machine. Thanks everybody for watching me on Lee Anderson's Real World. Been another great show with some cracking guests. More of the same next week, but coming up next, we've got State of the Nation with Miriam Cates.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A very good evening to you. Temperatures falling sharply out there at the moment, leading to a very frosty start to the weekend. Many of us will have a dry weekend thanks to high pressure. But although the pressure's high, the temperatures are going to be